What if the person you thought was powerless turned out to be the one with the most power in the room? What if an innocent arrest led to the downfall of an entire corrupt system? This is the story of a woman underestimated, a system exposed, and a truth so explosive that no one saw it coming. The sun hung low over downtown Chicago as Maya Brooks stepped into an upscale boutique, dressed in a simple beige coat and jeans. She browsed through the racks, her fingers brushing against the fine fabric of a designer jacket. Behind the counter, Heather, the store manager, narrowed her eyes. She leaned toward a sales associate and whispered, "She doesn't belong here." Moments later, Maya felt a presence beside her. A security guard loomed over her, his stance rigid. "Ma'am, I need to check your bag." Maya blinked. "Excuse me." Before she could protest, the store doors burst open, and two uniformed officers stormed in. Officer Ryan Carter, a tall man with a cocky smirk, approached her. "We received a report of a suspicious individual attempting to shoplift." Maya let out a soft laugh. "You can check the cameras." "I haven't." "Turn around," Carter ordered. When she hesitated, he grabbed her wrist, twisted it behind her back, and snapped on the cuffs. "Wait, this is a mistake," she said, struggling. The boutique's customers watched in silence, some shaking their heads, others smirking in satisfaction. Carter patted down her pockets. His eyes lit up as he pulled out a small plastic bag filled with white powder. Well, look what we have here," he sneered. Maya's stomach dropped. That wasn't hers. "Where did that come from?" she demanded. "You tell me," Carter said, flashing a grin. "You're under arrest for possession of narcotics and attempted theft." His partner, Officer Jake Miller, chuckled, shaking his head. "You criminals never learn, do you?" Maya's breath quickened. "Call my lawyer." Carter pushed her toward the exit, ignoring her protest. "You'll get your phone call at the station, if you're lucky." As they escorted her outside, a bystander lifted his phone to record the arrest. Carter noticed, ripped the phone from the man's hands, and smashed it on the pavement. "Mind your business," he snapped. Maya clenched her jaw. This wasn't just an arrest, it was a setup. The ride to the station was silent. She stared out the window, her mind racing. These men thought they had her. They thought she was helpless. They had no idea who she really was. As the police cruiser pulled into the precinct, Maya exhaled slowly. It's time to show them exactly who they're messing with. The cold metal of the handcuffs dug into Maya's wrists as Officer Carter yanked her out of the cruiser. The precinct was bustling. Officers laughing over coffee, a drunk man slurring nonsense in a holding cell, the air thick with the smell of burnt coffee and cheap disinfectant. Maya kept her posture straight, her eyes sharp, calculating every detail. "They think I'm powerless. Let's see how long that lasts." Carter shoved her forward. "Keep walking." Officer Miller walked beside them, flipping through a report. Maya Brooks, no priors. Clean record. Funny how first-time offenders always claim innocence. Carter snorted. "Doesn't matter. We caught her red-handed." Maya tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "You planted that evidence," she said calmly. Carter stiffened but recovered quickly. "That's cute. You think you're in a movie?" They led her into a dimly lit interrogation room, the air thick with the scent of stale cigarettes. Carter uncuffed her and pushed her into a metal chair. He leaned in, hands on the table, his breath laced with coffee and arrogance. "Let's make this easy," he said. "You confess, and maybe we cut you a deal." Maya didn't flinch. She locked eyes with him, her voice smooth as glass. "And what exactly am I confessing to?" Carter grinned. "Possession, attempted theft, resisting arrest, maybe even distribution, if we feel like it." She leaned back, crossing her arms. "You sound awfully sure of yourself." Miller stood near the door, smirking. "We know how this ends. You'll beg for a lawyer, but by the time they get here, the DA will have your case wrapped up nice and tight." Maya sighed, then slowly smiled. "You're right about one thing." Carter arched a brow. "Yeah." She leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "I do want to make this easy." Before either officer could react, the door swung open so hard it slammed against the wall. A team of heavily armed SWAT officers flooded the room, rifles raised. Miller stumbled backward, his face drained of color. "What the hell is this?" Carter's smirk vanished as a man in a black tactical uniform stepped forward. His badge gleamed under the fluorescent light. "Agent Brooks," he said, nodding respectfully at Maya. Maya stood up, rubbing her wrists where the cuffs had been, and turned to face Carter and Miller. Their confusion quickly turned to horror. Carter's voice wavered. "Agent." Maya reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a black leather wallet. She flipped it open and placed it on the table between them. The golden emblem of the CIA shone under the flickering light. "I'd introduce myself properly," Maya said, her voice smooth and deadly. "But I think you already know who I am." Miller choked on air, looking between the badge and her face. No, this is a mistake." Maya smirked. "Yeah, and you just made the biggest one of your life." The head of the SWAT team turned to Maya. "Orders." Maya held Carter's terrified gaze. "Arrest them." Carter and Miller froze as the words left Maya's lips. "Arrest them." The SWAT team moved instantly, closing in with precise, practiced efficiency. "What the hell is going on?" Miller stumbled back against the wall, hands raised as two officers grabbed him. Carter, always the cocky one, tried to put on a smirk. "This is a joke. You can't." A SWAT officer spun him around and slammed his hands onto the table, locking cuffs around his wrists. The irony wasn't lost on Maya. "You planted evidence," she said, her tone calm but razor-sharp. "Violated multiple civil rights. Abused your power. And—" She reached into her pocket, pulled out a folded document, and tossed it onto the table. Carter glanced at it, his breathing uneven. He recognized the seal of the Department of Justice. "That's an active federal investigation into your entire precinct," Maya said, her eyes burning into his. "Corruption, coercion, unlawful arrests. Turns out, I'm not the first person you've done this to, but I will be the last." Miller's face drained of color. "This is bullshit." Maya tilted her head. "Oh, that little stunt you pulled in the store? The fake evidence? Smashing that bystander's phone." She let out a soft chuckle. "You really thought no one was watching?" Carter gritted his teeth, trying to maintain control. "You can't prove anything." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Cannot." She nodded to one of the SWAT officers, who stepped forward and placed a tablet on the table. The screen lit up, displaying a live video feed. A shadow moved. A man stepped into view, a federal agent, sitting in another room of the precinct. Detective Marcus Reed. Maya saw the recognition in Carter's eyes. "Remember him? He's been deep undercover for over a year now. And thanks to your big mouth, we got everything we need." Carter's breath hitched. Maya leaned in. "You were set up too, sweetheart. Just not the way you thought." Miller began shaking. You planned this?" Maya smiled. "You planned this. I just let you walk right into it." The realization hit them hard. This wasn't a simple arrest gone wrong. This was a full-blown takedown. And they were the targets. The SWAT leader turned to Maya. "We've got what we need. Want us to process them?" Maya studied the two men in front of her, watching as the weight of their downfall settled in. She nodded. "Take them." Carter and Miller were dragged out of the room, their protests drowned by the sounds of their own handcuffs clicking shut. Maya stood there for a moment, letting out a slow breath. One corrupt precinct down. More to go. And she wasn't done yet. Maya watched as Carter and Miller were dragged from the interrogation room, their shouts of protest fading into the background. She had seen this moment coming from the start, but now that it was here, she felt no satisfaction, only a sharp, unwavering focus. This wasn't just about them. It was bigger. A SWAT officer approached her, his face unreadable. "They're being processed now. But we both know this doesn't stop with two dirty cops." Maya nodded. "It never does." She turned, walking out of the room with calm, deliberate steps. The precinct, once buzzing with activity, now felt tense, uneasy. Some officers avoided her gaze. Others watched her with thinly veiled hostility. They knew. They just didn't think she would be the one to bring it all crashing down. As she stepped into the main hall, Detective Marcus Reed was waiting for her, leaning against a desk with his arms crossed. He was a seasoned agent, sharp-eyed and always 2 steps ahead. "That was satisfying to watch," Reed said, pushing off the desk. "But you know we're not done here." Maya smirked. "I know." Reed handed her a file. "We've been tracking this precinct for months. Carter and Miller are small fish. But their captain? That's the real prize." Maya flipped through the file. Captain Thomas Briggs. A high-ranking officer, well-respected in the public eye, but behind closed doors? A master manipulator. A man who pulled the strings and let men like Carter and Miller do his dirty work. Reed lowered his voice. "He's covered his tracks for years. But after today, He's going to know we're coming. Maya closed the file, her expression unreadable. Good. Let him. Reed raised an eyebrow. You don't want to wait? Build a stronger case. She turned to him, eyes sharp as a blade. I don't need to build a case. I just need him to make a mistake. Reed smirked. And how exactly do you plan on doing that? Maya glanced across the precinct. Captain Briggs was watching her from his office window. She met his gaze and smiled. By making him think he's already won. Maya walked out of the precinct, stepping into the cold night air. She had barely made it 10 steps when a black SUV pulled up beside her, its windows tinted. The door swung open. Inside, Captain Briggs sat in the back seat, his expression calm, composed, too composed. Agent Brooks, he said smoothly. Care for a ride? Maya hesitated for half a second before stepping in. The door shut behind her. Briggs studied her, his eyes calculating. You've made quite a mess today. Maya leaned back against the seat, completely unfazed. You have no idea, she said. Briggs chuckled. Oh, I think I do. He tapped on the glass, and the driver pulled away from the curb. Maya didn't ask where they were going. She already knew. The black SUV moved smoothly through the dimly lit streets, the city lights flickering against the tinted windows. Maya sat still, her expression unreadable, but her mind was racing. She was in enemy territory now. Across from her, Captain Thomas Briggs sat with his legs crossed, one arm draped lazily over the back of the seat. He looked relaxed, almost amused, but Maya knew better. Men like him never relaxed. I have to say, Briggs started, his voice smooth, measured. That little stunt you pulled today? Bold move. Maya tilted her head slightly, keeping her eyes locked on his. Just another day at the office. Briggs chuckled, shaking his head. You and I both know this isn't just any case. You're making a lot of powerful enemies. Maya smirked. Funny. I thought I was just doing my job. Briggs leaned forward slightly, the air in the SUV growing heavier. Here's the thing, Agent Brooks. He spoke her title with a hint of mockery. Carter and Miller? They were reckless. Sloppy. I let them play their little games because it kept things running smoothly. Maya raised an eyebrow. So you admit it? Briggs smirked. Admit what? That I run a tight ship? That I keep things in order? He leaned back. You think you've got me cornered, but let me ask you something. His eyes darkened. Do you really think you can win? Maya felt the SUV take an unexpected turn, heading away from the precinct, away from the city center. She knew this tactic. Isolate the threat. Apply pressure. Make them feel vulnerable. Briggs watched her reaction closely, but Maya didn't blink. Tell me, Captain, she said smoothly. Is this the part where you threaten me? Briggs smiled, but there was no warmth in it. No threats, Agent Brooks. Just a friendly warning. The car slowed to a stop. Maya glanced out the window. An empty lot. No streetlights. No cameras. Briggs sighed, shaking his head. I had hoped we could work this out quietly. But you just couldn't leave it alone, could you? Maya turned back to him, her expression completely calm. I could say the same to you. A moment of silence. A dangerous pause. Then, Maya moved first. She lunged forward, twisting Briggs's wrist, forcing him against the seat before he could react. The driver spun around, reaching for a gun. Too slow. Maya had already drawn a knife from her boot, pressing it against Briggs's throat. The car erupted into chaos, the driver cursing, Briggs struggling, but Maya didn't budge. Her voice was cold, sharp. Let me tell you how this ends, Captain. Briggs froze. This isn't just about Carter and Miller, she continued. I have files, witnesses, people inside your own department. The minute I go missing, every agency in this country will be tearing your operation apart. The driver hesitated, hand still on his gun. Maya didn't even look at him. Try it, she warned. See what happens. The tension hit a breaking point. Briggs exhaled slowly. Then he laughed. Not a nervous laugh. A knowing one. He raised his hands in surrender. Damn, you're better than I expected. Maya kept the knife steady, not trusting his sudden ease. Briggs glanced at the driver. Let her out. The locks clicked. Maya pushed the door open and stepped out, still watching him carefully. Briggs smiled, straightening his suit. I'll see you soon, Agent Brooks. Maya didn't answer. She just turned and walked away, disappearing into the night. The game had just begun. Maya walked away from the SUV without looking back, her pulse steady despite the storm brewing inside her. Briggs had let her go, but not because he was afraid. because he had something else planned. And that was what worried her. She pulled out her phone, dialing as she slipped into a shadowed alley. The call connected. "Tell me you're somewhere safe." Reed's voice came through, low and urgent. "I'm fine," Maya said. But Briggs knows. A sharp inhale. Knows what? Everything. She glanced over her shoulder, scanning the empty street. The undercover op. The witnesses. He's not panicking, Reed. He's planning. A brief pause. Then, get to the safe house. Now. Maya was already moving. She cut through the alleys, taking a non-direct route, making sure she wasn't being followed. She reached the safe house, a rundown apartment on the city's outskirts, perfect for laying low. Inside, Reed was waiting, his face tight with tension. "You need to see this," he said, shoving a tablet into her hands. Maya took it, her breath catching at what she saw. Surveillance footage. A warehouse on the edge of town. Men loading crates into unmarked vans. And in the center of it all, Captain Thomas Briggs. Reed pointed to the timestamp. "This was taken 30 minutes ago, right after he let you go." Maya narrowed her eyes. "He wanted me to see this." Reed nodded grimly. "He's setting up a trap." Maya studied the footage, her mind racing. Briggs was too smart to make an obvious move. If he wanted her to come to him, it meant. Her stomach dropped. "It's not about me." Reed frowned. "What?" Maya's grip on the tablet tightened. "He's baiting me, yes, but not just me." She looked up. "He's going after the witnesses." Reed's face darkened. "He's tying up loose ends." Maya didn't hesitate. "We move now." Reed grabbed his gun. "I'll call for backup." "No," Maya's voice was sharp. "If we wait, they'll be dead before we get there." Reed held her gaze for a long moment. Then, with a sharp nod, he followed her out the door. The warehouse loomed ahead, lights spilling from the open loading bay. Maya and Reed moved silently, weapons drawn. Inside, 3 men knelt on the cold concrete floor, hands tied behind their backs. One of them, a young officer named Tyler Jones, their key witness, looked up, his face bloody. A gun was pressed against his head. Standing over him was Briggs. Maya stepped into the light, gun trained on him. Briggs didn't even flinch. He smiled. "Right on time." The other officers whipped around, weapons raised. Reed cursed under his breath. "We're outnumbered." Briggs tilted his head, studying Maya. "You're a smart woman. You knew this was a trap." Maya's finger tightened on the trigger. "And you knew I'd walk into it." Briggs chuckled. "See, that's what I like about you, Agent Brooks. You never back down. That's why I knew you'd come." He pressed his gun harder against Tyler's temple. But the question is, was that the right choice? The game was no longer about evidence. It was about survival. And the clock was ticking. Maya kept her gun steady, her mind calculating every possible move. Briggs had control of the situation, for now. His men surrounded the warehouse, weapons trained on her and Reed. And worst of all, he had the witnesses. Briggs smirked, pressing the barrel of his gun harder against Officer Tyler Jones's temple. The young officer's breathing was ragged, his face bruised from whatever they had done to him before Maya arrived. "Let's talk, Agent Brooks," Briggs said smoothly, like they were discussing business over coffee. "You want the kid? Fine. Walk away from this case." And I let him go. Maya didn't blink. "You're not in a position to negotiate." Briggs let out a mocking laugh. "Aren't I? Because from where I'm standing, you're outnumbered, outgunned, and outplayed." Reed shifted beside her. "We have backup coming," he bluffed. Briggs grinned. "You really think I don't have men watching every road into this place?" "No one's coming, Agent Brooks. It's just you, me, and a decision that could get this kid's brains blown all over the floor." Tyler let out a strangled breath, his eyes darting toward Maya, pleading silently. Maya's mind raced. If she hesitated too long, Briggs would kill him just to prove a point. She needed an opening, a distraction, and then she saw it. The overhead crane. A massive steel beam hung above Briggs's men, held up by a single latch. If she could get to the controls. Maya glanced at Reed. Just a flicker of her eyes, but he understood immediately. They had one shot. She tightened her grip on her gun. "Fine," she said, lowering it slightly. "I'll walk away." Briggs raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Smart girl." Maya took a slow step back, Reed mirroring her movements. Then, she dropped to one knee and fired. The warehouse erupted into chaos. Briggs's men scattered, bullets tearing through the air. Reed dove behind a stack of crates, returning fire. Maya sprinted toward the control panel, dodging gunfire. A bullet grazed her shoulder, pain flaring, but she didn't stop. Briggs cursed, yanking Tyler up as a human shield. "I will put a bullet in his head," he roared. Maya's fingers flew across the controls, releasing the steel beam. With a deafening crash, it dropped, slamming into the ground, sending dust and debris flying. The distraction was enough. Reed took the shot, his bullet hitting Briggs in the shoulder, making him stumble and release Tyler. Maya charged forward, slamming into Briggs, knocking the gun from his hand. They hit the ground hard, grappling for control. Briggs was strong, but Maya was faster. She twisted, using his own weight against him, and flipped him onto his stomach, yanking his arms back. "Game over," she hissed, snapping handcuffs onto his wrists. Briggs grunted in pain, but still smirked. "You think this ends with me?" he whispered. "You have no idea what you've just started." Maya didn't flinch. She pressed her knee into his back, pinning him down as sirens wailed in the distance. Backup had arrived. Red and blue lights flashed across the warehouse walls as police and federal agents swarmed the scene. The night air was filled with the sound of orders being shouted, criminals being restrained, and boots pounding against the pavement. Maya kept her knee firmly pressed into Briggs's back, her breathing heavy from the fight. She had won this round. But Briggs's words still echoed in her mind. "You think this ends with me? You have no idea what you've just started." She looked down at him, his smirk still intact despite the pain. That smirk wasn't fear. It was confidence. Reed rushed over, panting slightly, gun still drawn. "We got the rest of his men. Warehouse is secure." Maya nodded but didn't move. Something felt off. "Take him in," she ordered. "Maximum security. No visitors, no calls." Two agents grabbed Briggs and hauled him to his feet. His smirk never wavered. "See you soon, Agent Brooks." Maya didn't respond. She just watched as he was dragged toward an armored transport. Something wasn't right. Reed noticed her expression. "What's wrong?" Maya exhaled sharply. "He's too calm. Too sure of himself." Reed frowned. "He knows he's done. His entire operation just crumbled." Maya shook her head. "No, this wasn't just about him. He was stalling." Reed's face darkened. "Stalling for what?" A sudden explosion ripped through the night. The armored transport erupted into flames, a deafening roar tearing through the air. Maya instinctively ducked, shielding her face as the shockwave rattled the ground. Debris flew, agents shouting orders, gunfire breaking out in the distance. And in the chaos, Briggs was gone. Maya's heart pounded as she scanned the smoke-filled air. Reed grabbed his radio. "We have a breach. Suspect is loose." Maya's mind raced. This was the plan all along. Briggs had never expected to win the fight. He had expected to be caught, because someone was waiting to get him out. And whoever that was, they had resources. Serious resources. Maya took off running toward the burning wreckage, her instinct screaming. Through the smoke, she saw tire marks leading away from the scene. Damn it. She slammed a fist against the side of a police car. Reed ran up beside her, coughing through the smoke. How the hell did they know exactly when to strike? Maya turned to him, her jaw clenched. "Because we were never just hunting Briggs." She looked back at the destruction. The real threat was still out there. And now, they knew her name. The night air was thick with the stench of burning metal. Flames flickered against the blackened remains of the transport truck, casting eerie shadows across the warehouse lot. Briggs was gone. Maya stood motionless, her mind racing. Who had the power to pull off an escape like this? Who was backing him? Reed cursed beside her, still gripping his gun. This wasn't a simple jailbreak. Someone with serious connections just made their move. Maya barely heard him. Her focus locked onto the tire marks leading away from the scene. Briggs had been extracted with military precision. This wasn't just corruption. It was something bigger. She turned sharply. "I need a trace on all known associates. Everyone he ever worked with. Everyone who could have ordered this." Reed pulled out his phone, already dialing into their federal databases. "I'll get my contacts running searches." "But Maya, if someone went through all this trouble, it means we just made ourselves targets." Maya clenched her jaw. She already knew that. A sharp buzz from her phone made her glance down. Blocked number. She hesitated, then answered. A voice, smooth and controlled, spoke on the other end. "Agent Brooks, you're in over your head." Maya's grip tightened around the phone. "Who is this?" A slight pause. Then, "Someone who knows what happens to people who dig too deep." The call went dead. Maya pulled the phone away, her skin prickling. Reed saw the look on her face. "What? They know who I am." Reed exhaled slowly. "Whoever this is, they're watching us." Maya wasn't rattled. She had faced worse. But this was different. Before she could respond, a gunshot rang out. The side mirror of a nearby car exploded, glass showering the pavement. "Sniper!" Reed shouted, shoving Maya behind a concrete barrier. Another shot cracked through the air, narrowly missing them. They were being hunted. Maya glanced around quickly, calculating. The sniper had a high vantage point, likely from one of the rooftops. She grabbed her gun, steadied her breathing. "We can't stay pinned down," Reed said through clenched teeth. Maya's eyes darted toward the abandoned warehouse entrance. "Their only cover." "On my count," she murmured. Reed nodded. 3, 2, 1. They broke into a sprint, bullets whizzing past them as they dove into the warehouse. The gunfire stopped. Whoever was out there wasn't wasting shots. Inside, Maya pressed against the wall, chest rising and falling steadily. Reed wiped sweat from his forehead. "This isn't just about Briggs anymore. This is a hit." Maya nodded. "Which means we're getting close." She peered through a cracked window, eyes scanning the rooftops. The sniper was gone. "They're testing us," she murmured. Reed gave her a sharp look. "And what do you plan to do about it?" Maya's expression hardened. "Make them regret it." The warehouse was eerily silent, the air thick with dust and tension. Maya and Reed stayed low, backs pressed against the cold concrete wall. The sniper was gone, but that didn't mean they were safe. Maya's mind was working fast. Briggs had been extracted with military precision. A sniper had been waiting. The anonymous caller had warned her. This wasn't a warning anymore. This was a war. Reed exhaled slowly. "We can't stay here. They'll regroup." Maya glanced at her phone. One missed call. No number. Whoever was behind this wanted her to know they were watching. She dialed a secure line. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Agent Brooks. I was expecting your call." Maya's jaw clenched. "Then you know why I'm calling." A soft chuckle. "Briggs was a pawn. You took him off the board. But you didn't think you were playing alone, did you?" Maya stayed silent, her grip on the phone tightening. The voice continued, smooth as ever. "You have no idea how deep this goes. Walk away, Agent Brooks. While you still can." She smirked. "You don't know me very well, do you?" The line went dead. Reed gave her a sharp look. "Who was that?" Maya pocketed the phone. "Someone who just made a mistake." Reed frowned. "What mistake?" She turned toward him, eyes blazing. "They think I'm still playing defense." She pulled out a second phone, a burner, untraceable. With a few quick taps, she accessed a secured government server. If they had resources, so did she. Within seconds, a file appeared on her screen. A name, a face, a location. "Found you." Reed peered over her shoulder. "Who the hell is that?" Maya's smirk was cold. "The real player behind this game." She handed him the phone. "Get a team. Quiet and fast. We move now." Reed studied her for a second. "Are we ready for this?" Maya's gaze was sharp. "They came for me. It's time I returned the favor." The warehouse was eerily silent, the air thick with dust and tension. Maya and Reed stayed low, backs pressed against the cold concrete wall. The sniper was gone, but that didn't mean they were safe. Maya's mind was working fast. Briggs had been extracted with military precision. A sniper had been waiting. The anonymous caller had warned her. This wasn't a warning anymore. This was a war. Reed exhaled slowly. "We can't stay here. They'll regroup." Maya glanced at her phone. One missed call. No number. Whoever was behind this wanted her to know they were watching. She dialed a secure line. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Agent Brooks. I was expecting your call." Maya's jaw clenched. "Then you know why I'm calling." A soft chuckle. "Briggs was a pawn. You took him off the board. But you didn't think you were playing alone, did you?" Maya stayed silent, her grip on the phone tightening. The voice continued, smooth as ever. "You have no idea how deep this goes. Walk away, Agent Brooks. While you still can." She smirked. "You don't know me very well, do you?" The line went dead. Reed gave her a sharp look. "Who was that?" Maya pocketed the phone. "Someone who just made a mistake." Reed frowned. "What mistake?" She turned toward him, eyes blazing. "They think I'm still playing defense." She pulled out a second phone, a burner, untraceable. With a few quick taps, she accessed a secured government server. If they had resources, so did she. Within seconds, a file appeared on her screen. A name, a face, a location. "Found you." Reed peered over her shoulder. "Who the hell is that?" Maya's smirk was cold. "The real player behind this game." She handed him the phone. "Get a team. Quiet and fast." We move now. Reed studied her for a second. Are we ready for this?